Welcome back. Sir Jake Berry and Kevin Maguire are still with us. Sir Jake Berry, you were fired after 50 days in a job you've always wanted. Must have hurt.
Well, even the best things must come to an end, Harry. It was an amazing opportunity to work really closely with Liz Truss as Prime Minister. But I accept that there's two real appointments that are very close to the Prime Minister. The first is the party chairman. The second is the chief whip. Unfortunately, come in and out with your Prime Minister. I'd hoped for a few more days, but it was a great privilege to have the opportunity to do it.
You were with Liz Truss in those final moments in Downing Street, some of those meetings where everything was thrashed out. What was it like in there? What was the mood like? I mean, when did she really know that it was over?
Well, look, the former Prime Minister was always very chipper, and she was a fighter, not a quitter, as I think she said to Parliament.
But then quit.
But then she quit.
But I think there came a point where she realised that all the newspapers, including ones that are traditionally supportive of the Conservative Party, had really made their mind up about her. Colleagues had made their mind up about her. And there was no real way of fighting back. And that was compounded. The straw that broke the back of the very heavily burdened camel was the chaos that we saw in the division lobby over the fracking vote. And that felt like the point of no return. It was extraordinary.
But mistakes had been made long before then, even in the very earliest days of her premiership. When did you realise it was going south?
Well, I kept fighting. I mean, I was always the eternal optimist, and I thought, I think the danger is with having changed Prime Minister now is, and I made this point to colleagues in advance of the change, I think the danger is that there are real questions out there now in the country about whether we should have a general election. That would be, frankly, a catastrophe for the Conservative Party. And I do support Rishi Sunak's call to unite behind him and focus on the national interest. But I think those questions about when that election will come will get louder and louder, particularly from opposition parties.
I wanted to come to that because you were responsible for the party's membership. There was a feeling over the last couple of days that the members have been ignored, and they're the people who ultimately you're going to ask to vote for you. I mean, do you think that relationship between the Westminster Party and the Conservative membership is, can you put it back together, or is it broken now?
Well, look, we can always put it back together, but I think it has been severely damaged. I was a big advocate of having a members' vote. I didn't really actually like when we saw the 1922 committee, the sort of all-male panel, a bit like the sort of Chinese Politburo grinning, saying there is one candidate and acclaiming that candidate. I would have really liked to have seen a competition. That's not what my colleagues wanted, and the Conservative Party was ready in short order to do an online vote, which would have delayed the process of the selection of the new Prime Minister only by 48 hours. I'm sure the members feel quite angry about that. I'm just an ordinary member of the Conservative Party as well as being an MP. I would have liked to have had my say because I didn't even get a vote in that election because I was in charge of the election. So I think it's a pity.
One person that could have avoided the talk of a general election is the man with the mandate, Boris Johnson. You backed him in 2019. Did you want him to come back this time?
Well, I backed him in 2016 and 2019. I'm a long-term friend and backer of Boris Johnson. I accept actually it probably wasn't the right time for him to come back. I presume he will have thoughts about coming back at some future date.
But he tried very hard and he led a lot of people up the hill and, sort of pulled the plug out at the last minute while people were still saying he should come back on television. Do you think he's disappointed people?
Boris Johnson has stood in 3 leadership elections and withdrawn from 2 of them. And
he's surely done now, though, isn't he?
Well, I don't know. I think people have got poor betting against the bounce back. He's the proverbial rubber ball, keeps bouncing back.
Would you vote for him again?
Well, I don't know. I have to wait and see.
Some of the problems that were there for Boris Johnson and for Liz Truss are still there for Rishi Sunak. And even though your party feels buoyed by Prime Minister's questions today, the reality is it's going to be, a difficult couple of months. You mentioned a general election there. Do you think it's possible for the party to solve those issues without one now?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I thought actually PMQs was the best first outing at PMQs I've seen in the, whatever it is now, 5 Prime Ministers that I've seen on their first outing in that role. I thought it was fantastic. Look, whether we like it or not, we don't live in a presidential country. Parties get elected, parties then choose their leader and they become Prime Minister. I thought the interesting thing is that no Prime Minister since 1974 has come in and out of office by a general election. That's a very long time, and it shows that both Labour and Conservatives do reserve the right to change their leader halfway through a Parliament.
And just give us an insight before we let you go, at least for this segment. What was it like to be sacked? How did that go down?
Look, I understand. I've known Rishi Sunak a long time. I went in and he gave me a sort of speech about, all the things I'd done which he thought were great, which was nice to hear. But then ultimately, there just aren't enough seats around the table for everyone
But
to
you
have
knew
a
it was
job.
coming, didn't you, at that point?
Well, I'd gone out to bat for the Prime Minister, both during the former Prime Minister, both during the leadership election and in her last days in Downing Street. And as I say, it was a personal appointment. I was very personally loyal to her. I didn't expect to continue in my role, but I do wish Rishi and his new team all the best. And I really hope they can unite and win that general election.
So, Jake Berry, you served in the government with Suella Braverman. Is she the right person to fix this?
Well, look, let's look at the facts. We are currently spending £7 million a day housing
2.2 billion a year.
housing people in hotels. Well, just think of those seats up and down the country who'd happily take 2 days' worth of that money to revitalise their high streets. It's not working, and I think we do need a new approach. The first thing I would like to see us commit to is, if you cross the channel illegally, you should be sent back to France. You shouldn't be given asylum in this country. I would like, forget planes taking off and going to Rwanda. I'd like to see ferries going from Dover to Calais, or that way around, that's fine, Dover to Calais, with people who've come to this country illegally. We have a proud history of welcoming people to this country, but there are many legal routes, and if people cross illegally, they should be sent back.
On Suella Braverman, though, you were there in the government, in the bunker at the end when she was fired. Was it right that she came back?
Well, 6 days is a long time in politics, so
It's for
the new Prime Minister, and he must be free to appoint whoever he wants. But look, what I would say is, from my own knowledge, there were multiple breaches of the ministerial code. In fact, multiple breaches of the ministerial code. It was sent from a private email address to another member of Parliament. She then sought to copy that individual's wife and accidentally sent it to a staffer in Parliament. To me, that seems a really serious breach, especially when it was documents relating to cybersecurity, as I believe. That seems a really serious breach. The Cabinet Secretary had his say at the time. I doubt he's changed his mind in the last 6 days, but that's a matter for the new Prime Minister.
And did she hold her hands up to it in that meeting? Did she admit it?
Well, I wasn't in the meeting, but as I understand it, the evidence was put to her, and she accepted the evidence rather than the other way around.
Jake Berry, Kevin Maguire, thank you very much.